Part 73. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 721. The opening scene of The Swordsman in White is extremely domineering. It even gave birth to an unrealistic fantasy in Ye Bai's heart. Maybe, Wilhan can win? Unfortunately, what he watched was not a live broadcast, but a video from 36 years ago. Ye Bai, who knew the outcome of this battle in advance, was like a reader who had been spoiled, and his sense of anticipation had completely disappeared. After this battle. Bad news, the most powerful demon is still alive. Good news, Wilhan is still alive. But, according to Wilhan, he will die sooner or later. This night, I'm afraid the latest will be before the battle between Xiaoao and the most powerful demon. Otherwise, the strong human race would not be so anxious. The blue banished immortal would not carry the sword box on his back and run to the eternal forest. If Ye Bai guessed correctly, after he left, Lan Bangxian should go back to find Xiaoao. Ye Bai didn't know what they were talking about specifically. But, it's not a big problem. When Ye Bai returns to the eternal forest, he can ask his third brother and he will find out. Therefore, Ye Bai focused all his attention on the battle in front of him. In fact, if you want to watch the battle between the strongest human race and the strongest demon god, ordinary people do not have this blessing. As long as you keep this battle in mind and review it from time to time, you will benefit a lot. The last time he watched Xueju fight, Ye Bai had some realization. Afterwards, it became much easier to combine the source of greed and the source of disaster. The impact is far-reaching. If nothing else happens, Ye Bai will be able to learn a lot from these two battles in the next 36 years. However, this time compared to the last time, Ye Bai's strength has improved again. The stronger the strength, the higher the vision, the more things Ye Bai can understand. More importantly, unlike Nightmare's fighting method, Wilhan is a real swordsman. The battle between the nightmare and the powerful demon is more like a metaphysical model, which is beyond the scope of Ye Bai's understanding. He can only extract some scraps from the corners. Just this, Ye Bai can still treat it as a treasure and study it carefully. On the contrary, Wilhan opened and closed, and every time he swung the sword, it brought insights to Ye Bai. As for how the powerful demon god defended himself, Ye Bai didn't care. You can't learn it anyway, there's no need to learn it. Ye Bai doesn't intend to become the most powerful demon god, so why should he learn this? In fact, if the sword moves reach the level of Wilhan, wanting to defend is already wishful thinking. The most powerful demon god used the simplest strategy to deal with Wilhan's sword move: smash it. Since ancient times, bad tactics have been widely used in battles between strong men. Once the person begins to lose his temper, his face becomes thicker, his heart becomes numb, and all physical and soul attacks become ineffective. The person can only let the person lie on the ground, accept his own weakness, and become invincible. The destruction of the most powerful demon is very simple. His health bar is thick enough and can be cut without leaving any trace. Today, either Wilhan will chop the most powerful demon to death alive, or the most powerful demon will consume Wilhan to death here. An attack of this level is not as simple as consuming mana, which would not be able to cause damage to the most powerful demon at all. Every time Wilhan uses his sword, his own energy will be consumed. In other words, Wilhan is risking his life. At the beginning, Wilhan drew his sword very fast, and each sword could severely damage the most powerful demon god and make his aura weaken. After a while, Wilhan began to sweat, the frequency of his sword strikes became slower and slower, and the aura of the most powerful demon god also dropped to the bottom. Then, in front of Ye Bai, the most powerful demon god dropped from level 1999 to level 1998, and his aura instantly returned to its peak. Ye Bai, you're so cheating, aren't you? If someone else's health bar is empty, then another one will be filled. It's better to get to the most powerful demon god. If you hit an empty one, you will be resurrected with full health. This is equivalent to Wuhan killing the most powerful demon once every time he drops a level. Hiss. Yabai remembered that he once heard his third brother say that after Wuhan fought the supreme demon god, the supreme demon god dropped from level 1999 to level 1899. In other words, the second brother killed the most powerful demon 100 times. This. Even though he knew that Wuhan was tough, Yabai never thought that it would be so terrifying. The continuous sword attacks put a huge burden on Wuhan. But even Yabai can see that Wuhan can't stop. Although the most powerful demon god was in trouble, he did not give up the opportunity to counterattack. Once there are any flaws in Wuhan's attack, the most powerful demon will immediately counterattack. By that time, Wuhan not only failed to achieve results in his attack, he even had to pay for himself. Therefore, can't stop. Draw the sword, draw the sword, draw the sword. Countless sword lights flashed before Yabai's eyes. For the first time, he knew that there could be so many sword moves. Wuhan even learned how to use the sword on the spot, how to slash smoothly. Seeing Wuhan, the most powerful human being at his peak, Yabai truly felt what it means to be at the pinnacle with every sword. There is no moisture in Wuhan's words. He just likes to present the facts. As more and more swords are drawn, the level of the most powerful demon god gradually declines. Half an hour later, Wuhan had killed the most powerful demon 7 times. If it were Yabai, with this kung fu, he would have died more than 7,000 times under the light of Wuhan's sword. Wuhan, who had been drawing his sword for half an hour, had sweat on his forehead for the first time. The strongest man sweats, which is not a good sign. Yabai's pupils narrowed and he noticed a detail. Wuhan's sweat is not transparent and colorless, but slightly pink. The sweat is mixed with blood. He wasn't sweating, he was bleeding. The doubts in his heart were somewhat relieved at this moment. He took the time to sigh and said, as expected of me. In fact, even Wuhan beside Yabai squinted slightly, unable to look directly at the sword light. It's not because the most powerful demon god talks about martial ethics. If Wuhan can persist in hacking for 3 days and 3 nights, the mighty demon might really be hacked to death. When Wuhan, dressed in black, sheathed his sword, both sides stopped in tacit agreement. Until, Wuhan draws his sword again. It's a pity, Wuhan is about to run out of gas. This day seems like it will never light up again. He really makes me cry to death. Yabai had never been so desperate as at this moment, and the thick clouds above his head seemed unable to be cleared away. There was no way, the strength gap between the two sides was too big. If Yabai saw this move clearly, he would probably go blind. This is my last attempt to save the world. He couldn't imagine what Wuhan had to do to leave the abyss alive and cut down the powerful demon in front of him to level 1899. Most of the time, the blood belongs to the enemy. Yabai heard the sound of the sword falling. Just like last time, the final blow from the most powerful one deprived Yabai of his vision, leaving him with darkness. It's been so long, but the second brother still doesn't forget to boast. Yabai opened his mouth slightly, unable to hide the shock in his heart. What Yabai couldn't imagine, Wuhan could do. The swordsman in black jumped up, the broken sword in his hand bursting with infinite light. Yabai felt that at this moment his hands and feet were cold, the blood in his body seemed to be frozen, and time stopped at this moment. In fact, he just likes to wear white clothes. When fighting, the blood will be splashed on it and it will become black. Why does Wuhan always wear white clothes and black clothes, 2 colors? The blood and sweat fell on the white clothes, and a dark flower bloomed. This sword move is even somewhat familiar. Yabai just stood here, desperately watching the ink-colored flowers blooming, and desperately watching the swordsman in white suddenly turn into black. Watch it. attack without reservation, burning life with every sword, while severely injuring the most powerful demon god. He is also killing Wilhelm step by step. He is the strongest among mankind. His white clothes are stained with blood, but he is still the sword god. It's that simple. Wilhelm, who had struck out this sword, stood proudly above the 9 heavens, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and with the pride of a swordsman and the determination to die, he struck out the last sword. Rather, being demoted one after another was uncomfortable for him, and the many fused strongest men in his body began to lose control. But this time, Wilhelm, who chose to attack when facing the most powerful demon god, was almost forced into a desperate situation. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 722. Yebai's heart sank when he heard Wilhelm's last move. He remembered how Master Zhu had reacted when he wanted to imitate Jian Tianqing. Master Zhu despised Wan Tianqing and thought it was unlucky, so he tried to persuade Yebai not to learn it. Yebai was still too young at that time and didn't think deeply about it. He thought that Master Zhu was just playing hard to get and tricked him. In fact, Master Zhu really thinks this thing is unlucky. The sword light converged, and Yebai's vision recovered little by little. The supreme abyss was closed again, and the supreme demon god, who was severely injured again, slowly fell into a deep sleep. If you want to give him a line, please invite the next strongest human being. When Xuezhu came, the most powerful demon was level 2000. When Wilhelm came, the most powerful demon was level 1999. When Xiaoao came later, the most powerful demon god was only level 1899. Xiaoao's calculation back then was probably correct. It would take at least 9 generations of the strongest human beings to completely kill the strongest demon. As the most powerful demon god closed, the black-clothed swordsman also turned and left, casually throwing away the heavenly king's sword in his hand, turning it into a stream of light and flying towards the direction of the eternal forest. He is the only one who survived after fighting the most powerful demon god. This record alone is something to be proud of. In front of Yebai's eyes, a reminder also lit up. The last tension, enter the blood lock state, designate a target as the enemy, and all damage caused by sword moves will cause an equal amount of real damage to the locked target. The sword move that has been used can only be used once, and one sword must be used every 24 hours, with an upper limit of 180,000 swords. When the sword moves run out or the target dies, the blood lock ends, and the user dies. It turns out that this is the final moment of salvation. Looking at the description in front of him, Yebai fell into silence, and even his breathing slowed down. He thought that after knowing the truth about Xuezhu's death, he would no longer feel heartache. Until this moment, when the true cruelty and ruthlessness of history appeared before his eyes, Yebai didn't know the price paid by the most powerful people in the human race. During the battle, Xuezhu broke out on the spot, broke through to level 1000, and came back from the upper realm. In the same desperate situation, Wilhelm's sword cost his life and completely ended his fight with the most powerful demon. After releasing the final power to save the world, the most powerful demon will naturally let Wilhelm leave. The reason is simple. The more desperate a person like Wilhelm is, the more energy he will explode. Forcing the opponent to stay in the abyss of the strongest will only cause trouble for the strongest demon god. It is better to release Wilhelm. Let Wilhelm take it easy, the sword in his hand may be blunt. After using the final power to save the world, Wilhelm was no longer able to pose a life threat to the most powerful demon. Wilhelm burned his own origin, used his unique and powerful mark, and bet everything on himself. He cannot kill the most powerful demon, but he can continuously injure the opponent. Yebai noticed that 36 years ago, when Wilhelm left the strong abyss, he casually threw the heavenly king's sword back. And Wilhelm's broken sword was nowhere to be found. Wilhelm also tried to recapture Xuezhu's body, but it was impossible for the powerful demon to let him succeed. Obviously. In the view of the most powerful demon, the nightmare still has the possibility of resurrection. If Wilhelm really succeeds, the most powerful demon can choose an auspicious day to bury himself. Bang bang. The sound of applause sounded. Wilhelm clapped his hands twice and praised. Wonderful and wonderful. Yabai realized it later and immediately clapped along with Wilhelm, the captain of the Kwa team. Wonderful and wonderful. Although these words are Wilhelm's original work, coming from Shura's mouth. The corners of Wilhelm's mouth that had just been raised suddenly stopped. Think about it carefully, is it really a good thing to be praised by Shura? To be discussed. If the person applauding today is Nightmare or Xiaoao, Wilhelm feels that the gold content is quite high. Shura. Go back a little. Although Yabai didn't know what his second brother was thinking. But he was very sure that the second brother was probably insulting Shiu. It doesn't matter, just show off and accept your weakness. Wilhelm suppressed his smile, and Yabai asked just right. Second brother, can you kill the most powerful demon with every sword you strike now? Wilhelm nodded, indeed. Then, he was a little surprised again. You can actually see that. It can be seen that Shura's problem is somewhat beyond his level. Ignoring the other party's insult, Yabai continued to ask. If that's the case, the battle between you and the most powerful demon, my second brother, hasn't ended yet. Theoretically speaking, you don't count. The further he went on, the softer Yabai's voice became. But Wilhelm understood what he wanted to say. Since that battle was not over, Wilhelm could not be counted as having survived from the most powerful demon. But Wilhelm is a man who always says what he says. In the past 36 years, I have been a little slack. After all, I am not the most powerful person in this generation. Without courage on my shoulders, people will slack off. Why would the most powerful human race come to defeat the boss, the most powerful demon god? Yabai understands, Wilhelm understands, and the most powerful demon god also understands. The human race that escaped the disaster became the hope of killing the most powerful demon god, and also became the target of the most powerful demon god. In this way, it is impossible to kill the most powerful demon god. Because if this guy is released, people will really die. As soon as he appeared in this world, the first thing he did was destroy the Eternal Tower, and the second thing he did was destroy the human race. The 9 eternal tribes are more or less involved with the most powerful demon god and become a part of it. The reason is simple. There are 10 races involved in building the Eternal Tower. Yabai swallowed and asked tentatively. Second brother, how many swords have you fired over the years? The human race is the only race that can hope to kill the most powerful demon. This time, even Tan Yan recognized Shura. Wilhelm smiled lightly and said casually. Not much. This sword slashed into the void, but a wailing sound could be vaguely heard from the supreme abyss. Because the ancient times were too weak, let alone the strongest, there were not even those who could practice. Yabai thought for a while and asked again. Who wouldn't want to live well if they could? 105,472 swords. Report a number without trace. Wilhelm sighed, feeling quite emotional. Wilhelm figured out the aspect of wanting to advance before suppressing it. Yabai didn't even believe the punctuation marks of Wilhelm's words. Not much. In this kind of life and death battle, there is no room for concession. Let me tell you, you are really brave. Wilhelm thought for a while and then slashed out a sword. Apparently he had just realized something. Use less provoking methods, it's still so clumsy. You don't have much, how much is it specifically? So. Because of the final tilt, Wilhelm's every sword fell on the most powerful demon. This number is related to how long Wilhelm can live. This shows how much courage it takes for Yabai to say this. On the contrary, it is the human race. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 723. The swordsman in black left, but Wilhelm beside Yebai did not leave. Now that the drama has come to an end, the sword has also been learned. Logically speaking, Yebai should go back with Wilhelm. Yebai looked at Wilhelm beside him, but was surprised to find that he was unknowingly far away from him. Based on this alone, Yebai felt that something was wrong. An ominous premonition crept into my heart. Second brother, you. Yebai didn't even say a complete sentence, but countless sword energies emerged in front of his eyes. Subconsciously, Yebai raised the shield in his hand to protect all his vitals. But these sword energies did not hurt him at all, but instead built an indestructible sword prison around him. Yebai was a little angry. How could the most powerful human being attack behind his back? Seemingly seeing through Yebai's little thoughts, Wilhelm said seriously. I did it in front of you. Yebai. Now, there is nothing more to say. The scene before him seemed similar to Yebai. Xuemeng seemed to have been trapped like this when he met Wilhelm. Suddenly, Yebai enjoyed the same treatment as De Menzi. Second brother, we promised to be brothers, but you want to be father and son. Yebai's face suddenly became weird. Even if Wilhelm hacked him to death today, Yebai would not recognize Wilhelm as his father even if he died. No way. People can die, heads can be cut off, but seniority cannot be messed up. Wilhelm saw Yebai's thoughts and said casually. Brother is like father. Yebai also tried to struggle, then you are also the second brother. Wilhelm nodded slightly, the second brother is like the second father. Yebai. People are numb. When Wilhelm has a sword in his hand, his principles make the most sense. Yebai understands this deeply. Wilhelm explained. This sword prison is banishing you to this long river of time. If you can learn something from the sword prison, maybe you can come out. Wilhelm didn't expect Yebai to be able to learn all of this sword. In fact, even Xuemenglei couldn't do this. Wilhelm looked slightly serious, then put back his playful expression. What happens next will be very dangerous. Anyone may die. No matter me or Xiaoao, no one is sure to survive. If you are just dealing with the most powerful demon god, Wilhelm certainly doesn't need to be so cautious. The problem is, Yingju wants to take back Xueju's body. This is something that the most powerful demon will never allow. In other words, whether Wilhelm or Xiaoao, they will face great pressure and even risk falling. Both sides knew it. Yebai has always been able to jump around and make waves, only because someone is covering his head. By then, Xiaoao may not be able to protect himself, let alone Yebai. In the human race, there must always be one strong person left. If you can get out of the sword prison on your own, it means that you have the ability to participate and the ability to protect yourself. At least you will not become a burden. Wilhelm's voice became fainter and fainter, and the man and the white horse disappeared from Yebai's eyes. Wilhelm's meaning is very simple. Anyway, this sword prison will not harm Yebai, it just traps him in this video. When he can come out depends entirely on Yebai himself. Maybe it will be the next second, maybe it will be 37 years later. If Yebai is stupid enough, maybe the most powerful demon gods have come to knock on the door, and Yebai hasn't broken through the sword prison yet. Maybe, Jianlao will save Yebai. Being in the sword prison, Yebai did not panic or panic at all. He didn't take anything Wilhelm said to heart at all. Since it is a sword prison, there is always a way to break the prison. Yebai doesn't have to worry about this. Believe in the strongest seeds of the human race. Even Shura. He sat cross-legged, with the Heavenly King's sword flat on his knees. This sword was brought out by Nightmare from the Eternal Tower. It went around in circles and finally fell into Yebai's hands. The ancestor of the Heavenly King's sword was also extremely powerful. When it was at its strongest, it was also an SSS level equipment. However, the level was damaged due to several battles with the most powerful demon. When Yebai was still weak, the Heavenly King's sword was indeed a great help and helped Yebai defeat many powerful enemies. As Yebai's strength increased, the effect of the Heavenly King's sword became smaller and smaller. In the final analysis, Yebai is just a half-baked swordsman. His true identity is a mage. His talent in shielding is much higher than that of swordsmanship. At this moment, Yebai just lowered his head, his eyes falling on the Heavenly King's sword, and Wilhelm's last move seemed to appear in front of his eyes. The final victory. After using it, there is good news and bad news. Good news, blood locked. Bad news, you will die when the blood lock ends. While walking, Wilhelm opened a jar of wine and took a big gulp of wine. The wine was as red as blood. Xiaoyao looked at the butterfly on his fingertips, thought for a while, and said. In the long river of time that Yebai could not see, the swordsman in black had a battle with the most powerful demon and left the abyss of the most powerful demon with his seriously injured body. The butterfly was about to flap its wings and take off, but it seemed to feel something and stopped again. The moment the 180,001 sword cuts were completed, Wilhelm died. Go, find someone interesting. The Taoist who had been standing there naturally broke through a certain barrier. The swordsman in black sighed, shook his head, and said helplessly. To be precise, this is something that only Wilhelm can do in the world. When he came to be the strongest and went to the immortal, Wilhelm had already retreated from the strongest strength, but his swordsmanship had improved further. Since you owe the other party a life, you must do what you can. Even if Yebai didn't want to learn this trick, he learned it after seeing it. The Taoist stood there like a piece of wood. After a moment of silence, he nodded and said. As he said that, he ignored the newly promoted human race's strongest man, didn't even congratulate him, and turned around to leave. Why do you want to learn this unlucky thing? My evaluation is not as good as Wilhelm Duo. Just because he is traceless. The reason is simple. Unstoppable enemies. Really? The swordsman in black glanced at the Taoist, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, shook his head, and said seriously. The swordsman in black drinks blood and wine, looks up to the sky and smiles away. Not long after the swordsman in black left, the Taoist raised a finger, and a butterfly fell on it. There wasn't much he could do for Wilhelm. Find me again in 36 years. The Taoist retracted his fingers and calculated silently in his mind. At the moment when Wilhelm's breath weakened slightly. It's just like a wooden pile, very boring. I hope the next generation can be more interesting, otherwise there won't even be anyone to talk to, and it will be boring. He slowly closed his eyes and sighed. He always tells the truth. In the past 36 years, every time Wilhelm struck out with his sword, it not only struck the enemy, but also fell on the most powerful demon. From then on, the human race had one more powerful person, Xiaoyao. This is a scene that happened 36 years ago, and only the person involved knows about it. Xiaoyao asked himself, in a battle with the most powerful demon god, he could not reach the level of Wilhelm. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjio Old Thief. Chapter 724. In the time video, the sword energy is vertical and horizontal, forming a series of prisons, which are extremely tight. If the devil were trapped here, he could start destroying it directly. There is definitely no chance to go out in this life. In the next life, I will find a way to be reincarnated into the human race and not be affected by the evil spirit of the demon race. Yebai is also showing off at this moment. He sat in the middle of the sword prison, but instead of rushing to break the sword prison, He waited quietly until a reminder appeared in front of Ye Bai's eyes. He is gone? After confirming that Wuhan was gone, Ye Bai's heart that wanted to become a monster could not calm down. Trapped in the sword prison, it seemed that Ye Bai had only one way to escape. Wuhan forgot that what Ye Bai was good at in his life, apart from picking out wool, was getting stuck. In the sword prison, Ye Bai carefully left an object that could be used as a coordinate object, and then began to try to fix the bug. Void exile. Ye Bai's eyes stored a skill from the god of war, which could banish the target. If the target is locked to Ye Bai himself. Exile successful? Soon, Ye Bai successfully escaped from the sword prison and came into the void. Where am I? Feeling that the aura of his coordinate object was still there, Ye Bai felt a little calmer. He first left the void and rushed towards the nearest abyss. A terrifying crack suddenly opened in the sky above the ninth abyss, and a mage dressed in white and holding a shield and sword passed by in a low profile. When Ye Bai passed by, he didn't forget to shout, "I've never been here." The ninth demon god. This human race's most powerful seed is a bit too arrogant. The ninth demon god sat on the demon throne, looking in the direction Shura left, with a trace of fear in his eyes. He could clearly sense that Shura's strength had skyrocketed again. If you really take action, you may not have a chance of winning. Thinking of this, the ninth demon god suddenly became happy. Stop pretending, I'm showing off my cards, I'm a human undercover. Ye Bai took advantage of the ninth abyss and continued to shuttle in the void. He ran out because he wanted to do something small. To do this, you must borrow strength. Can't do without the help of a white pony. How to find Baiju? According to Ye Bai's understanding, SSS level talents will be affected by the host. For example, the happy butterfly is very cold. My own arrogance is very arrogant. If you think according to this idea, the second brother's Baiju should also be a member of the praise group. Ye Bai thought for a while and tried to praise the other person. The most powerful SSS level talent in history, your speed cannot be captured even by the eye of insight. If you praise him, why are you scolding me? Ye Bai's efforts are rewarded. Soon, something blurred before his eyes, as if something flashed past him. Ye Bai continued to increase his efforts and boasted to the sky. Just when Ye Bai was about to finish talking, Baiju finally appeared. Well, look, Wuhan is my second brother, how do I call you? Ye Bai hesitated for a moment. The second brother's horse can't be called the second horse. Baiju stood in front of Ye Bai, motionless, like a sculpture. Could it be that you don't understand? Ye Bai frowned, it's not a big problem. As long as someone is around, Ye Bai is invincible in terms of communication. dash. Following Tan Yan's translation, Ye Bai began to try to speak horse language and communicate with Baiju. Baiju reacted. It puffed out a puff of white breath. Just when Ye Bai was about to continue his efforts, he heard Baiju say, "Speak English." Ye Bai. You are so good at talking. After all, he wanted something from the other party, Ye Bai said patiently. Brother Bai, you see, what a coincidence, I am also Brother Bai. As far as Bai is concerned, we are still a family. Being related to a horse, you are really promising, Shura. Baiju snorted, quite disdainfully. Among the eternal origins controlled by the most powerful demon god, Baiju is the most special type. Because it involves the law of time. In fact, when Wuhan participated in the awakening, all the eternal origins were almost crazy. Baiju relied on his own ability to take the lead. Of course, it was a similar scene when Xiaoao woke up. Ye Bai talked in circles and finally said what he really meant. I want to read more about history. On the one hand, I can gain some understanding. On the other hand, if I want to save my second brother and eldest brother, I must know what happened back then. This time, Baiju didn't have the previous disdain, but his eyes were a little cautious. Yabai understood Baiju's eyes. Are you sure you want to do this? Yabai nodded steadily. He must have confirmed it. Yabai has made up his mind and is ready for everything. Bring it on. Then, Baiju raised his hind legs, gave Yabai a kick, and kicked him away. It was quite sudden. There was a blur in front of his eyes, and Yabai felt that there was a blur of light and shadow in front of him, and the scenery gradually became clearer. Without the previous desire to vomit, Yabai felt that he was almost getting used to it. Of course, this is also related to the fact that the last two destinations were the abyss. Where did Baiju take him? Yabai was confused and completely confused. He doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know how to get back, he doesn't know what he should do. You just say you don't know anything and that's the end of it? Obviously, Danyan only complained about this feature. Yabai could only have a rough guess about Baiju's ability, which was related to time. However, Yabai really didn't know what Baiju was capable of after 9 awakenings. Soon, the confused Yabai discovered an interesting target. Not far in front of him, there was a child squatting on the ground playing with a stick. The gameplay is very simple. Make a small pile of wooden sticks and pull them out one by one. During this period, the pile of wooden sticks cannot be allowed to collapse. However, the child's appearance was blurry and his facial features could not be seen clearly, as if he was covered with a veil. Feeling someone approaching, the child raised his head and looked at Yabai warily. Who are you, a demon? A child can actually see himself? Yabai concealed his surprise and asked, have you ever seen a demon? The child shook his head honestly, I haven't seen it before. At this moment, Yabai already had a rough guess about the child's identity. If nothing else, this should be the Children's Day limited time return edition Wuhan. Looking at the somewhat quiet child, Yabai couldn't help but sigh. His second brother was quite a good kid when he was a kid. Why do people get more angry as they get older? In the end, he lived like a grumpy old man. As Yabai looked at the child was also looking at Yabai. His eyes raised slightly and fell on the Heavenly King's sword at Yabai's waist. The moment the child saw the sword, his eyes lit up and he couldn't help but sigh. What a sword! Yabai! Is this, praising yourself? The praise from Wuhan, even if it is a limited time return version for Children's Day, Yabai can get a plaque. Looking at the child in front of him, Yabai admired it more and more. He was much more pleasing to the eye than his second brother. This child Wuhan is really smart since he was a child. Soon. The child's next words made the smile on Yabai's face slowly disappear. And taught Yabai what it means. This child Wuhan has been irritable since he was a child. The grumpy guy didn't develop in a day. I just heard the child shaking his head and saying in a very regretful tone. A good sword, it's a pity that I followed the wrong person. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 725. Hiss. This child will never know how much of a psychological shadow one sentence can have on an 18-year-old powerful seed. The child stretched out his hand and wanted to tug at the corner of Yabai's clothes. Yabai ducked slightly and asked, why are you pulling me? The child glanced at Yabai up and down and asked curiously, where did you buy these clothes? He just felt that if he wore white clothes, carried a sharp sword at his waist, slayed demons and acted chivalrously, he must be handsome, right? Of course, the guy in front of me is not handsome, but someone else has a problem. If you were yourself, there would be no problem. Yabai. Obviously, the child's thoughts were not hidden from Yabai. However, he is too old to argue with a child. I beg you, please think about it. Since he knew that his life was not in danger, Tanyan became more and more arrogant. Yabai ignored the prompt in front of him and asked instead, kid, where are your adults? The child squatting on the ground and continuing to play with the pile of sticks said casually without any fluctuation in his tone. Died. Children may have different perceptions of life and death than adults. But Yabai always felt a little uncomfortable when such a young child mentioned the word death so coldly. Yabai. Demons, demons again. Yabai could guess it without the other party telling him. The demons must have killed the child's parents after the abyss invaded. What did you say? The child asked in confusion. What does it have to do with the demons? This time, it was Yabai's turn to be surprised. Your family was not killed by demons. No. The child said frankly. I drank too much and died at the wine table. The other one ran away. Yabai. Is there something wrong with this script? Is it weird? The child asked back. Everyone dies, right? That's what I said. Yabai tried to organize his words and said hesitantly. But wouldn't it be nice if you could live forever without dying? Hearing Yabai's words, the child felt even more strange. If a person never dies, wouldn't he become a monster? Hiss. Yabai took a breath of cold air. He never thought about it. After he traveled through the world, he could practice cultivation. It was almost a consensus among people that the stronger he was, the longer his life would be. So, where does life end? 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or 100 million years? He was only 18 years old, in his prime, young and energetic. If it weren't for the threat of the most powerful demon god, a scourge like Yabai would have to live for at least tens of thousands of years. Child problems. Yabai didn't know the answer. But the strongest men in ancient times gave their own answers. If possible, they would never die. Therefore, there were the turmoil and fighting in ancient times, the tower building of the 9 eternal clans, and the birth of the most powerful demon god. Yabai suddenly realized something terrible. The reason why the most powerful demon god was born. It's because there are too many powerful people in this world who don't want to die. When their strength reaches its peak, their only pursuit in this life is eternal life. If the meaning of living is just to live, then what is the meaning of living? The topic suddenly rose to a philosophical level. Seeing that Yabai didn't respond, the child continued. My sisters told me that everyone is mortal. There is a very bad cell in the human body. If you want to survive, you will destroy other cells. It seems to be called cancer. Cancer cell? Yabai tried to explain to the child. If a person can live for a long time through his own efforts, and he still thinks that he is a human being and does the same things as humans, how can he be a monster? Obviously, Yabai wanted to convince the child. You have said so much, I am just a child, how can I remember it? The child squatted on the ground, continued to play with the pile of sticks, and finally said to Yabai. Do you want to play together? A quarrel with a child is like a farce, and it will be over after a few quarrels. Fine. Yabai thought for a while and squatted down like a child. He was bigger and it was uncomfortable to squat, so he simply sat on the ground. The moment he saw the pile of wooden sticks, Yabai's expression froze again. This is not a pile of sticks. This is the sword prison Yabai was in before. Although there are only similarities, Yabai will not admit his mistake. This is the sword prison where Wuhan trapped Yabai. He raised his head and stared at the child in front of him. Countless questions came to his mind, but he couldn't ask them. Seeing the wooden stick collapse, Yabai felt relieved and realized something. Play, play. Yabai. As time went by, Yabai's speed of drawing the wooden stick became slower and slower, and the children's urging became more and more urgent. I'm going to untie this pile of sticks quickly. I'm going to give out fruits soon. I should be eating apples today. With the last 3 sticks, it was Yabai's turn. Great, the pile of sticks didn't collapse. This kid is definitely not Wuhan. As if it turned from false to real in an instant, Yebai returned to the sword prison in a dazed moment. Don't make any noise, don't make any noise. Failed. As long as he pulls one out and the pile remains standing, he wins. Yebai knew this sword. The child was also a little nervous. If Yebai failed, the child would win. Where am I? Only when the sword actually fell on him did Yebai realize how terrifying this sword was. The speed at which the child draws out the stick every time is astonishing. The name of this sword, I don't know, I am a guest in my dream. It's your turn. He concentrated on looking at the pile of sticks in front of him, pondered for a moment, and then slowly pulled out a stick. What the hell is going on? Are you having fun? The child urged and said dissatisfiedly. Yebai slowly twitched the wooden stick. No matter how careful he was and how precise his force control was, the wooden stick still collapsed. He didn't escape from the bug, didn't find Baiju, and never saw any children's version of Wuhan. One big and one small, squatting on the ground, concentrating on playing with the sticks. Yebai swallowed. Although he didn't know what happened, he was not in danger at the moment. Do you really think you can escape? He could only bite the bullet and continue to crack the wooden stick in front of him. Before Yebai could breathe a sigh of relief, the child quickly took action and pulled out a wooden stick. The moment the stick collapsed, the world in front of Yebai collapsed. Who is he? He had even seen the fifth demon god being tortured by the sword and was in agony. Even with the eye of insight, Yebai was blinded by the sword just now. Just when he was about to have an epiphany, a cold voice sounded in Yebai's ears. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 726. Strangeness. Sitting in the sword prison, Yebai frowned. Logically speaking, the second brother used the last sword to save the sky, and each sword could only be used once. In the dream, I didn't know that I was a guest. This sword had already struck the fifth demon god, so I shouldn't be able to use it again. Why am I still affected by it? Or is it that Tan Yan was deceived again? It's okay to humiliate me, just pay attention to the number of times. Obviously, Trinyan said he takes full responsibility for everything that happened before. Looking at the sword energy around him and feeling the pressure, Yebai continued to think about this issue. As before, he was in no rush to break the sword prison. The sword prison was a test that Wuhan left for him, and Yebai had to hand over an answer sheet. In fact, it is challenging for Yebai to answer 60 points, but if you give it a try, you will probably succeed. A powerful person who has just passed will fail. Yebai's ambitions don't stop there. As long as his life is not in danger, Yebai, as the volume king, will usually get full marks. Not quite like others. Many people can reach their limit only when their lives are in danger. Yebai must eliminate the danger to his life before he can break out. Just like last time, he was faced with a desperate situation and lost money. When he was desperate, he resorted to his strongest move. The sword prison in front of him was the same. In fact, after dealing with Shura several times, Wuhan has completely figured it out. The sword prison he chose was the best test for Shura. If it were other powerful seeds, Shura wouldn't need to go through such trouble. Throwing it on the battlefield, facing the threat of death, it exploded and broke through on the spot. The most embarrassing part here is, if there is no guarantee of 100% survival rate, Yebai will usually not go to the battlefield at all. It belongs to teaching students in accordance with their aptitude. The sword was firmly in Yebai's eyes, a little abstract and distorted, as if it had turned into the pile of sticks it was before. This pile of wooden sticks is the simplest sword prison, and it is also a game Yabai played with his children before. Yabai still doesn't know who the child is. Yabai is not sure whether there is even this child. The only thing he was sure of was that by untying the pile of wooden sticks in front of him, he could break through the traceless sword prison. If the pile of wooden sticks is broken, Yabai can escape. However, his method was one of taking off in 60 minutes, which was still far from Yabai's final request. 1,000 miles begins with a single step. If you want to get a perfect score, Yabai should get a 60 first. Moreover, as his ideas for cracking the sword prison broadened, Yabai's understanding of the sword prison also improved little by little, and perhaps there would be answers to the doubts in his heart. Yabai didn't move, but in his eyes, the pile of sticks was being pulled away bit by bit. Every time he pulled away a stick, Yabai felt like he was carrying the Wanjun mountain on his back and trekking through the desert, which was extremely difficult. Yabai clearly remembered that every step he took with his children only needed to copy homework. The child could draw the stick much faster than Yabai. In other words, if you let a child break the sword prison and give him the same ability as Yabai, the child will be much faster than Yabai. Looking back now, Yabai had to understand the meaning of each step before he could proceed to the next step. Otherwise, it would be like swallowing the jujube in one go, and Yabai's breakthrough would be ineffective. When the wooden stick was halfway broken, the change happened again. The pile of sticks in Yabai's mind actually started to move. This sword prison is not a dead thing, immutable, but alive. Yabai couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Has Wilhen's swordsmanship reached this level? It can only be described in 4 words, so terrifying. The wooden sticks are changing, which means that Yabai's previous method of breaking the situation no longer applies. He was not a rigid person, so he immediately adjusted flexibly and tried to continue to break the situation. Sometimes he succeeds, sometimes he fails. The corresponding changes in the sword prison seem to be endless. Yabai must try his best to use good skills and less common skills to have a chance to succeed. As he thought about it, he tried to break the situation in his mind, failed again and again, and tried again and again. Yabai sat in the sword prison for nearly half a day. Suddenly, his expression changed and he laughed. "Oh, I'm broken." In his mind, no matter how the sword prison in front of him changed, it could not escape the ending of being broken. If Yabai follows the actions in his mind to crack it, it will only take a little more time to finally escape from this sword prison. In other words, Yabai is free. But he didn't move. Yabai flexed his muscles and looked at the sword prison in front of him again, with the appearance of a pile of sticks appearing in his eyes again. This time, there were more sticks and it was much more difficult to succeed. Once successful, Yabai will have one more way to break the sword prison, and his final score will be further. You can brag, you can brag. At this moment, Shura already has the strength to break the situation. He just sat in the sword prison, immersed himself in it, sometimes frowning, sometimes laughing, sometimes falling asleep like a fisherman. Looking at the scene in front of him, Wilhen nodded with satisfaction and said seriously, "A bit of verbal humiliation is enough. This top-secret document is fake. Although Shura's performance is relatively high, it is not advisable to underestimate Shura." Wilhen would praise himself from time to time, and he would praise Wilhen from time to time. Lan Bangxian didn't know when he came back. The first 18 years of Yabai's life were a blank. Not letting Yingju do this kind of thing would be a disgrace to his reputation as the inventor of history. Although Yabai did not make a move to break the situation, Wilhen could clearly sense that as a peak sword wielder. The first abyss. Wilhen was thinking about where to place the 7 white stones next, when suddenly his face froze, as if he sensed something. The files on Shura within the human race record in detail the first 18 years of Shura's life. Every detail. Like a madman. When they have no inspiration, the two will also play chess. This is much faster than Wilhelm expected. This time they decided to challenge some difficult chess games and pursue more masters. Something interesting seemed to have happened in the chess game he left behind. He said with slight surprise. Forger, needless to say. 6 pieces. As usual, he followed Wilhelm with his sword box on his back and his fairy aura floating in the air. Lan Tiankai probably wouldn't have expected that the most important material he used to study Shuro was forged. Look, the chess game is broken. Hearing Wilhelm's words, he asked casually, what's broken? Shuro still has secrets. This made Wilhelm a little surprised and a little surprised. In the entire human race, only 2.5 beings know one thing. Wilhelm is very clear that there is no way to be selected to become the most powerful seed. It broke so quickly. Wilhelm thought for a while, stretched out 2 fingers, and a sword energy flew out, penetrated into the chessboard made of the great demon's body, and opened a hole. Lan Bangxian watched the chess game to prevent Wilhelm from cheating. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjia Old Thief. Chapter 727. The sun rises and the moon sets, and the stars move. In the blink of an eye, 24 hours of work and 1 day passed. Ye Bai sat in the sword prison for almost 2 days. Congratulations, the latest test score, 64 points. The sword prison that Ye Bai saw in front of him was not entirely his own imagination, but also had a small contribution from the Eye of Insight. As the deduction process progresses, the Eye of Insight can also develop many new functions, such as giving Ye Bai a score. 64 points, according to rounding, is no different from 60 points. Ye Bai was not discouraged. This was the sword prison left by the most powerful Wilhelm. It was not that easy to break through. He stood up and moved his body in the cramped space. As he gets up, the sword energy around him will move back slightly. Ye Bai couldn't help but laugh out loud. The second brother was quite thoughtful. In this sword prison, Ye Bai lacked nothing. Even if he spent his whole life lying around, it wouldn't be a big deal. Of course, Ye Bai had no intention of doing this. He had rested enough and did not continue to try to break the sword prison, but carefully studied these sword energies. As Ye Bai progressed through the level, the deeper he understood the sword prison, the more he felt that his second brother's sword skills were really strong. It's just, being so strong is a bit abnormal. Soon, excitement appeared in Ye Bai's eyes. I know what's going on. These swords are all genuine, mark-free swords. But it was not the sword that Wilhelm slashed out at the same moment. After thinking about this, Ye Bai became more and more excited as he talked. These are the more than 100,000 swords that my second brother slashed in the past. This is the abyss of the strongest. These swords struck the strongest demon. The sword energy will not dissipate until the final blow is over. When Ye Bai saw the sword prison in front of him clearly, he naturally wanted to understand what was going on. In the past 36 years, Wilhelm's every sword strike has landed on the most powerful demon. These sword energies are naturally also around the most powerful demon god. Wilhelm did not directly trap Ye Bai. Instead, let these more than 100,000 swords form a sword prison to trap Ye Bai. The moment Ye Bai figured it out, the sword prison in front of him began to change. More and more sword energy emerged, and the difficulty of the sword prison increased exponentially, becoming more than 10,000 times more terrifying than before. Ye Bai. The second review score of the last test, 0 points. The candidate's mood is stable and there is no fluctuation in the electrocardiogram. I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid. I only knew that my second brother would not know he was a guest in his dream, but I forgot that my second brother's sword is so easy to break. Looking at the double difficulty sword prison, Ye Bai sighed, it would be better not to see it clearly. Soon, Ye Bai regained his strength and prepared to try again. For him, it was twice as difficult, but it just took more time. Moreover, Ye Bai figured out the origin of the sword energy and figured out the reason why he didn't know he was a guest in his dream. The more than 100,000 swords in front of him are already the limit of what Wuhan can produce. As long as the sword prison in front of him is broken, Ye Bai can get out. While cracking, Ye Bai would occasionally stop. Think about it, what Master Ju is doing now, does third brother understand, and how much Wu Shuemeng has grown recently. Yingju is still climbing the mountain. Shuemeng is still learning swordsmanship. The Taoist is still thinking about the problem. Eternal Tower. 99 floors. The Taoist still sat cross-legged. He suddenly felt that it was indeed boring to look at it like this. What if, closer? The moment the Taoist had an idea, the Eternal Tower shook. A butterfly landed on the Taoist's fingertips. The Taoist looked out the window. Go. Butterfly did not move, but looked at Xiaoao quietly, waiting for more detailed instructions. Go for what? Xiaoao thought for a while and said again, go and have a look. Butterfly raised his head, glanced at the scene outside the window, and glanced at the world. It didn't speak, but asked Xiaoao a question, is there a difference? No matter which angle you look at it, the human world is the human world. In Xiaoao's field of vision, the distance of the observation will not affect the observation results. He sees the sky as the sky, the clouds as the clouds, and the human world as the human world. Objective facts are not subject to subjective will. Sitting on the 99th floor of the Eternal Tower and looking closer, the human world is still the human world. Xiaoao thought for a moment, retracted his fingertips, and the butterfly disappeared. Butterfly is right. No matter how he sees the human world, it is all boring. Whether it is Nightmare or Wuhan, they are all fighting for the human race. Xiaoao is not. He only awakened his talent in order to survive. He only awakened his SSS level talent and became the mortal enemy of the most powerful demon. It's not that Xiaoao wants to fight the most powerful demon, but the most powerful demon wants to kill him. Xiaoao knew one thing very well. Xueju had a chance to ascend, but Xiaoao did not. Even if he goes to the upper world, the most powerful demon will find a way to hunt him down. What's more, Xiaoao doesn't want to go to the upper world. Xiaoao's existence protects the world and the sky. For Xiaoao himself, he subjectively does not have much motivation to do so. If it weren't for Yingju, Wuhan, Xiaoao probably wouldn't live on the 99th floor. He just wanted to find a pure place and think things through. Now, the problem seems to be solved. He looked at the scenery outside the window, and there was an emotion called confusion in his eyes. This feeling is very strange. I thought about it all day and night, but couldn't figure it out. Xiaoao decided. Go for a walk in the world. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjio Old Thief. Chapter 728. Whatever comes to mind, do it. This is Xiaoao. No one noticed that a white cloud left the Eternal Tower. When Xiaoao doesn't want to be noticed, no one can notice him. The white clouds floated to nowhere and suddenly stopped. On the edge of the city, he transformed into a Taoist. The Taoist moved on. Mom, look at that uncle who can fly. Xiaoao heard the child's words and looked around. Everyone was walking, but he was suspended in mid-air, floating forward like a ghost. Xiaoao thinks this is faster. In the past, he always stood on white clouds and sometimes on turtles. Not long after the child finished speaking, Xiaoao landed his feet on the ground and took a step forward. He can walk. Before he had taken 2 steps, another child raised his head and asked, Uncle, don't you feel uncomfortable if you don't wear shoes? Xiaoao looked down at himself and then at others. People are wearing shoes. He had not been in the human world for a long time, and he forgot to put on his shoes when he went out. A pair of cloth shoes appeared on Xiaoyao's feet. He kept walking. In this city, I am walking aimlessly. Not long after, Xiaoyao was stopped by two people from the city defense department. A child showed them the way. Uncle, he's just standing in the middle of the road and doesn't know how to hide if he's going to be hit by a car. A war general walked towards Xiaoyao and said kindly, "Sir, please show me your ID." Xiaoyao shook his head, "No. This." The general did not expect that the other party would simply say no. So confident. He looked at the man in front of him, who didn't look like he was seriously ill, and asked casually, "Can you provide your identity number, workplace, etc.?" Xiaoyao thought for a while and named his workplace, Wanwu Pavilion. He should be considered to be working in the pavilion of all things, right? Brothers of Wanwu Pavilion, tell me earlier that your business in Wanwu Pavilion is really fair. The war general relaxed a little and turned to ask, "What's your job number?" Xiaoyao shook his head, "No." Xiaoyao doesn't remember having such a thing. The general began to frown. This person worked in Wanwu Pavilion. How could he not have a job number? Are you kidding? The general asked patiently, "What about your superior?" Xiaoyao thought about it seriously and shook his head again, "No. This isn't funny. You work in Wanwu Pavilion, how can you not have a superior? Who do you think you are?" The general was already a little annoyed. He felt that the other party was playing a trick on him, so he asked instead. "There are no superiors, but where are the subordinates? Are there any?" "This has." Xiaoyao nodded and said a name, Zhao Qian. The war general's pen was suspended in mid-air, waiting for the next step. After waiting for a long time, the general said angrily, "Zhao Qian should have a job number. With such a common name, how could I possibly know who it was?" "Wait a moment." Xiaoyao paused for a moment and spoke again. "Zhao Qian said he doesn't have a job number either." "Warrior. What a coincidence. There are two people in Wanwu Pavilion who don't have job numbers." "What, you are the chairman and CEO, right?" He had already determined that the Taoist in front of him was probably a lunatic. Everything about Wanwu Pavilion and Zhao Qian must have been made up. "Okay, last question." Being teased repeatedly, the general, although in a bad mood, still followed the procedure. As long as there was no problem, he planned to call someone from the hospital to pick up the Taoist. "Have you had any dealings with demons recently?" This time, the Taoist gave the answer much faster. Xiaoyao nodded, "Yes. He took action some time ago to kill the 8th demon god and let the most powerful demon god go. These should all be considered dealings." "Warrior. Please come with us for a walk." "Here, I mean go, you take the car, why doesn't this person understand anything? The most powerful person in the human race is free and easy. Leaving the Eternal Tower, 7 minutes and 34 seconds. Ending, taken away by the City Defense Department. In the interrogation cabin of the City Defense Department. The Taoist sat on the chair and looked ahead quietly. Opposite him sat a war general and the war general's apprentice. Surname. Open. Name. Carefree. When the Taoist told his name truthfully. "Hiss your name, hiss." The surname is quite common, many people have the surname Zhang. It's just that this name is a little bit domineering. The two people responsible for questioning the Taoist took several breaths of cold air before they recovered. A slightly older general asked cautiously, "Are you noble this year?" Even though he knew that the other party could not be the strongest Xiaoyao, the general's attitude was still very respectful. The Taoist shook his head, "I don't know." The general asked bravely, "What is your place of origin?" "Place of origin." The Taoist tried to understand the word and quickly gave an answer. In order to express his meaning accurately, the Taoist specially expressed it in longitude and latitude. The general had to ask someone to check where the longitude and latitude coordinates were. He patiently continued to ask. So where do you live now? The Taoist repeated the original coordinates and added, 99 floors. You want to say the 99th floor, right? The general recorded and muttered again and again, this is too outrageous. There are not many buildings on the 99th floor of Blue Star. There is no need to live so high, and it is not convenient to get up and down. After asking some more basic questions, the general looked at each other and his apprentice, probably unable to ask for any more information. Okay, let's ask here first. If you have any needs, you can tell us at any time. As long as they are legal, we will meet them. After we confirm that you have nothing to do with the demons and have the ability to act independently, we will let you go. It will bring you many benefits. We apologize for the inconvenience. After saying that, the war general got up and left the hut with his apprentice. After closing the door, the apprentice asked in confusion, Master, are you so polite? What do you know? Your master and I were the ones who almost fell into the shadow back then. You are right to listen to me. The general said angrily. Go, fill out the form for our operation, and come to me after filling it out. After sending away his apprentice, the general's legs softened and he almost fell to the ground. Sweat was pouring out from his forehead, and his whole body was trembling, like a centenarian. Colleagues passing by thought he was sick and asked a few more questions. It's okay, I'm fine. The war general returned to his seat holding onto the wall. Old Lee, you are playing tricks on me. A fat man came over angrily and said dissatisfiedly. Didn't you just give me the coordinates for me to check? The general's eyes lit up and he asked quickly. Yes, have you found out? Found out? The fat man said angrily. Guess where it is? Seeing the fat man's reaction, the general felt as if an apple core was stuck in his throat. After opening his mouth, he spoke a word for a long time, and finally asked with trembling strength. Where is it? He actually knew the answer. The fat man spit out 4 words. The Eternal Tower. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 729. Master. Master. Something bad is going on. At this moment, General Lee's apprentice hurried over and said in a low voice. The Taoist we brought back before has disappeared. The general stood up quickly and asked angrily. Gone, what do you mean missing? He hurried to the hut and found that the Taoist had indeed disappeared. This matter is of great importance. Without hesitation, General Li Zhan immediately took out his communicator and started to contact his old boss. He was lucky enough to survive on the battlefield. The old boss didn't get such good treatment and just joined Shadow where he was. However, I heard that he has become very prosperous in recent years and is ranked among the best among the Shadow Kings. No, I recently heard that Shadow is going to expand, and I hope to impact the God of War. As soon as the communication was connected, a cursing voice came from over there. I just came back from the abyss. I can't survive this damn life. During the recent period, Shadow's labor intensity has been very high, and his salary has not been paid at all. Many Shadows suspected that the top management of Shadows had been replaced. The boss who used to be lazy, fishy, and careless was dragged down by the king of recruiters. After the rolling king climbed to the top of the Shadow, the entire Shadow rolled up. However, these are all rumors from high-level officials. They, small characters, chat casually after dinner and have fun. Tell me, what's the matter? Li Zhanzhan quickly told the other party the strange things and Taoists he had encountered. Boss, boss. There was no sound on the other side of the communicator. Just when Li Zhan was about to hang up the communication, a sissy voice suddenly appeared. Hey, hey, can you hear me? This voice was so feminine that it made people feel goosebumps all over their bodies. Such a distinctive voice can easily be associated with a legendary figure. The second in command in the shadows, the moody superpower, the right-hand man of the nightmare, the second shadow. Li Zhanzhan gritted his teeth and replied, "You can hear me. I'm at the door, come out and pick me up." General Li? He never expected that the other party would be so efficient. Soon, General Li Zhan led several people to the door and received a slender lady who looked particularly quiet. General Li glanced at the other party. If the voice just now was that of a woman, it wouldn't seem so inappropriate. He is still too young. As soon as the lady opened her mouth, a loud stubble sound hit everyone's eardrums. The same thought came to everyone's mind, what a wonderful girl, but it's a pity that she has a long mouth. The beauty opened her arms and shouted, "Everyone, look at me, I'm making an announcement." When everyone's eyes were attracted to her, a black light flashed, and everyone's eyes went dark. When they opened their eyes again, everyone looked at each other strangely. What just happened? What are we standing for? Go ahead and do whatever you have to do. After temporarily sealing everyone's memories, Yang Er squatted on the street corner and yawned. "Old Zhao, where should we go next?" Zhao Qian was sweating heavily at the moment, and his whole body was like an ant on a hot pot, not at all as calm as Yang Er. When the boss asked me my job number, I felt something was wrong. Who knows how he could? When Yang Er entered the sealed memory, Zhao Qian recalled all the videos. Not surprisingly, there was no trace of Xiaoao in the video. Even if I have met Xiaoao, I still can't remember Xiaoao's appearance. I just vaguely remember that there is such a person. Yang Er doesn't take it too seriously and even has the intention to make a joke. In other words, your boss is traveling all over the world and you don't know where he is. Do you know where your boss is? Zhao Qian sneered and asked. If something happens to my boss, regardless of whether the world is still around or the human race is still around, if your fourth master comes back, will you be able to take advantage of it? Hiss. When Zhao Qian mentioned fourth masters, Yang Er admitted that he was scared. On the one hand, Yang Er found that he could no longer defeat fourth master without risking his life. On the other hand, Yang Er knows very well how despicable the fourth master's methods are. The only meaning of Shura's existence is to lower the average lower limit of the strongest, the lower limit in every sense. If something happened to Xiaoao, even if Yang Er was not responsible, he could still think of what the fourth master would say. Shura would definitely say, putting aside the facts, "You are not wrong at all." On a hot summer day, Mr. Yang shivered. "Why are you still standing there?" Yang Er's voice raised a higher pitch. "Go find your boss quickly." Zhao Qian spread his hands, looked at the city with a population of more than 10 million in front of him, and asked helplessly. "How to find it? You can't use your own fighting power, you can't disturb Xiaoao, you can only search like ordinary people. Find a Taoist among millions of people. How is this different from finding a needle in a haystack? I'm going to order 2 coffins from Wanwu Pavilion now." Yang Er took out his tablet and even asked thoughtfully. "Old Zhao, do you want a slide top or a flip top?" Zhao Qian. Nanjiang Third Mental Hospital. The Taoist appeared outside the mental hospital, thoughtful. On the road before, someone said that he should go to a mental hospital. So, Xiaoao came. Looking at the mental hospital, Xiaoao was thinking, what next? He stopped an old man in hospital clothes and asked. "This is a mental hospital?" The old man nodded, "Yes, I have lived here for more than 40 years. Look how energetic I am. Xiaoyao asked again, what's in it? What else can there be in a mental hospital? Apart from mental illness, there are doctors. Before the old man could finish speaking, he was taken back by the pursuers. Why did you run out again without paying attention, sir? I'm sorry, I didn't scare you. He's not aggressive, he just likes to run around. Xiaoyao didn't really care what the person in front of him said. He was thinking that in a mental hospital, there are only psychiatrists and doctors. Xiaoyao looked at himself. It's probably not mental illness. Then you are a doctor? Thinking of this, Xiaoyao's Taoist robe disappeared and turned into a white coat. Wearing a white robe, he walked into the Nanjiang City No. 3 mental hospital. He saw that other doctors had work cards, and Xiaoyao had a work card. He saw other doctors carrying pens in their pockets, and Xiaoyao had an extra pen in his pocket. He saw that others had an office, and Xiaoyao had an office. He saw others who were sick. Xiaoyao was sitting at the desk. There was a computer on the desk, but the computer was not turned on. Opposite the desk sat a man with disheveled hair and strange behavior. This is the patient. Xiaoyao looked at his patient seriously for half a minute, just like other doctors. After a while, Xiaoyao said, "You're not crazy." The originally crazy patient calmed down at this moment, thought carefully, nodded and said, "Yes, I'm not crazy." Accompanied by his family members, the patient was discharged from the hospital. An electronic sound came from the loudspeaker hanging at the office door. Please ask the next patient Wu Suo to come to clinic No. 000 for treatment. Patient Wu, who was supposed to go to the third floor, walked into clinic No. 000 by accident. Half a minute later, Wu Suoei, who had recovered his health, walked out of the mental hospital. An electronic sound sounded again. Next patient please. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 730. Nanjiang City. Curbs. Your boss has been missing for 2 days. Mr. Ying was wearing a down jacket and eating popsicles in a high temperature of 40 degrees. My boss's true form is still in the Eternal Tower. Zhao Qian corrected him. As for where he is now, it's hard to say. Can you contact your fourth master? I can't. Ying Er shook his head and asked. Why do you contact fourth master when you have nothing to do? Do you think it's too much money? Zhao Qian. For normal people, having less contact with Shura seems to be the right choice. What's more, there is nothing to worry about when Shura disappears. This guy causes harm wherever he goes. Only Shura can harm others, so how can anyone else harm Shura? Zhao Qian's eyebrows came together and he sighed. I have a solution. Second Master Ying, who was squatting on the curb, suddenly jumped up and said enthusiastically. Your boss, although he hid himself, actually didn't use much of his abilities. Otherwise, Nanjiang City would have been gone. So what? Zhao Qian had to admit that it was really annoying that he only had crazy teammates around him. There wasn't even anyone to discuss it. After careful calculation, although the human race is stronger than ever, the current situation is still stretched thin. Little King Huo ran to the whirlpool of the void, old King Huo followed Yingju into the abyss, and even Sun Li followed. Shura didn't know what to do. Now, Zhao Qian looked around and saw that Ying Er had really become the face of the human race. Damn it, how did the human race fall to this point? Zhao Qian couldn't help but sigh. Tell me, what solution have you come up with? The shadow danced on its hands and alternately made 2 sounds from its throat. Look, your boss is pretending to be an ordinary person. We also pretend to be ordinary people. Wouldn't this be able to find your boss? Hiss. Zhao Qian took a breath of cold air. At first glance, this may seem like bullshit logic. Think about it carefully, what kind of bullshit logic is this? Only a senior psychopath like Mr. Ying could come up with such a crazy plan. Can ordinary people find ordinary people? In the end, Zhao Qian had no choice but to treat the dead horse as a living horse doctor. He can't have too high expectations for the second Master Ying. We agreed in advance that we will keep in touch regularly. If I don't find my boss within a week, I will go to the abyss. Zhao Qian warned him a lot, for fear that something might happen to Mr. Ying. Remember, treat yourself as an ordinary person. If something happens to you, you won't be able to pass Master Zhu's test. Do not worry. Second Master Ying patted his chest and promised. It's been 100 years since I came to Blue Star. I've learned a long time ago about such a simple thing as living like an ordinary person. Regarding the small matter of being a human being, Ying Er first learned from Ying Zhu, and then from Shura. With two excellent role models here, no problem. After saying that, the confident Ying Er Yi and Zhao Qian parted ways. The road faces the sky, everyone goes to one side. Zhao Qian looked at second Master Ying's back with unspeakable worry. I always feel like this guy is going to do something wrong. Zhao Qian probably wouldn't have expected that second Master Ying's experience would be much smoother than his. 15 minutes later, with the cooperation of the City Defense Department, Mr. Ying Er Yi was successfully controlled and sent to Nanjiang City No. 3 Mental Hospital for treatment. The City Defense Department is still guarding Nanjiang City today. Screams broke the silence of the corridor. Let me go. I have shed blood for the human race, and I have blocked a knife for Xue Meng. I want to see Master Zhu. I want to see Master Zhu. Where are you taking me? I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to go crazy. My father is the fifth demon god. Where are the people from the fifth demon sect? Come on. Help. How has Mr. Ying ever suffered such grievances in his life? After defining himself as an ordinary person, Ying Er Yi was very conscious and did not use any abilities. At this moment, he was tied to the hospital bed and pushed into a ward. Calm down, you are so crazy. 7 or 8 doctors and nurses gathered around Mr. Ying, talking all around. It's a good thing you're here, otherwise our hospital would definitely be closed today. Don't be idle. Let Dr. Zhang check whether this guy is mentally ill. Congratulations, you are the only patient in the third mental hospital. Second Master Ying? His voice trembled slightly. I'm the only patient in your mental hospital. Yes. When the doctor said this, he sighed. I don't know what's going on in the past 2 days. All the patients have been discharged from the hospital. Each one is in better spirits than the other. Our doctors are going crazy. Fortunately, you're here now. We're going to give you a general department consultation today. Just wait a moment, and I'll make arrangements right away. It's over. If the identity of the monster is revealed, we will be paraded through the streets. The doctor was wearing a pure white coat, with an ordinary name tag hanging on his chest, which read 2 lines of small characters in a low-key manner. Dr. Zhang took a look at Mr. Ying twice and gave the most accurate diagnosis. Dad, help me. There was fear and uneasiness in Master Ying's eyes. Second Master Ying suddenly thought that his father was a confused person who wanted to die. Madman. What did you do to the other patients? Could it be that, what the doctor said was discharged, actually meant he was killed? A blast of cool air penetrated into the second Master Ying's Tianling Gai. Tears, suddenly unbearable. What kind of mental hospital has only one patient? Zhang Xiaoyao. He is crazy to begin with, and it is not surprising that he has any thoughts. Doctor. Is it fun to parade on the street? Isn't it the kind where there are a lot of people and it's very lively? What a horror story script. This nagging doctor also said that all other patients have been discharged. His voice trembled slightly, even a little excited. The door was pushed open. Wait a minute, we are monsters. If we are killed, will we no longer be under the control of the king of hell? If he found out that his son was about to die, he might be so happy that he would even pop the champagne. He told Zhao Qian to treat himself as an ordinary person, and Zhao Qian followed suit. He really thought he was an ordinary person, and he really thought he was going to die. Joke. Doesn't he, Ying Erhui, know what the level of Blue Star's mental hospital is? Zhao Qian never expected that second Master Ying would even deceive himself. At this moment, Mr. Ying, who was lying on the hospital bed, had tears in his eyes. His second Master Ying struggled to raise his head, wanting to see his murderer clearly, and wait until he got to the King of Hell to sue him properly. Second Master Ying's mind was filled with all kinds of weird thoughts. The second Master Ying was distracted and could not clearly see the doctor who was treating him. Wow! Mr. Ying, who was lying on the hospital bed, felt his heart was so cold. Squeak!